Hi, my name is Jocelyn Kirkland, and today I'm going to be giving you a presentation on creating a lesson plan. So there are many steps to creating a lesson plan, and there are also many methods to doing this. I'm going to give you a brief introduction today on just how to get started. If you would, please take out a piece of paper so you can take quick notes. Great. So here's an overview. What are you planning to teach? That's the first things we're going to discuss. Followed by, what are your student goals? And then lastly, how will you achieve your student goals? When making a lesson plan, it's important to take all these things into consideration and really plan out thoroughly so that your lesson can be as efficient as possible. So, what are you planning to teach? First, you choose a subject. Of all the subjects within the curriculum, you choose the one that you're going to zero in on to make your lesson. From there, you choose an objective. There are Common Core standards that nationwide many states and school districts use for each grade level. If a child is in the first grade, every child should be able to do X. Or your school or your district may have certain objectives for your students. So regardless to where your school or district gets their objectives from, it's important that you choose the objective and your subject, and that's the starting for your lesson plan. After that, make sure that your lesson plan objectives are appropriate for the grade level. So if you have a kindergarten class, make sure you're looking through kindergarten objectives. Or if you have a first grader, make sure you're going through first grade objectives. This way, you can have most appropriate footing for your lesson. And lastly, the format is flexible. In college, we had to do 15 and 20-page lesson plans, and as tedious as it was, it really helped me to think over the processes in every aspect of the lesson plan. Then I got my first job, and all they wanted was a grid, just pointing out the objective and how you're going to do it, the materials, and that was really it. So the format is flexible, but it's important to know how to really elaborate on everything you do, the reasons why, just in case you need to explain or you need to present it to someone, or maybe share your plans with perhaps another teacher or a substitute or someone filling your place. So what are your students' goals? This part is important because you don't want to just teach for the sake of teaching and your students are not gaining from it or they're not benefiting from it. You want them to really gain from everything you do. Every time you open your mouth to teach something, make it count. So their objectives and data-driven lessons are really important. From there, you need to know, okay, I'm going to make this lesson. I want my kids to be able to perform a certain task. Well, how will you know if they can or cannot perform it if you don't have data to back it up? So if data is available, research and look and see what they know, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and that will help you to decide where you want them to go from there. Also, backwards design. This is very helpful because if you know the task you want them to end up at and you know their beginning part, then filling in the middle won't be as tedious. Or you'll know when you've arrived. If you don't know where the lesson ends or what your goal is, sometimes you can overteach or you may underteach thinking that they have enough but they haven't yet fulfilled the actual goal of your lesson. Right? Any questions before we go forward? Okay, let's move forward. So high-level planning and expectations. I've learned that this is very, very important. I'll plan a lesson with great materials, lots of resources, and then after 5 minutes, they've got it and it's done. And you have a whole time slot ahead. Well, with high-level planning, you already have a plan in mind. What if they finish early? Then we're going to do this activity. Or they'll have something that they need to do related to that same objective, but to help them to learn and grow and develop even beyond what you already planned. And also, with high-level planning, you plan for if they don't get it. Sometimes you can get up to do a lesson, you did everything within your power to make it count, and it flops. Nobody gets it. And then where do you go from there? If you plan at a high level, you'll know exactly where you should go from there as a teacher. Because if everybody didn't get it, then chances are it's not their fault. But as the educator, you can review, okay, well, how did I plan, and what can I do to make this objective really count? How can I plan to make sure that they reach their goal? The last one is premortems and misconceptions. What are the things that would be commonly misconstrued in the lesson that you teach? So automatically, like we have students with different conditions or different circumstances. They may have ADHD or they may have hearing problems or sight problems. If you know that a child has a certain thing going on with them, include that in your lesson. Plan for that. Okay, this child is going to get wiggly after a while, so he's not going to work in his seat by himself for that long. He's going to do his work and then come to the rug and start a hands-on activity. Like plan All these things, if the premortems and misconceptions that would come in the way of your lesson, plan for those things so that they can be worked out. And lastly, how will you achieve your goals? This is the fun part. Get creative. Teachers are all different. There is no recipe teacher. Everybody brings their personalities, everything they have to offer. You bring what you have to offer to your classroom. So this is the great part. Bring the fun, the joy, the excitement into what you're doing. And also personal attachment. For me, every lesson is a new opportunity to share new things with my kids. So I remember my first year of teaching when we talked about the life cycle. And I was so excited. I got an incubator. We got chicken eggs, and we had chicken eggs in the classroom. But before we did all that, I was talking to my father on the phone, and he explained to me that in first grade, he had done the same thing. So he's 50-something years old telling me how his teacher had the incubator, how they, candled the eggs to see if the embryos were living, and all these things that they did, and he's a 50-something-year-old man. So he remembers what he did back then. As a teacher, I want my kids to remember it forever, and you all as teachers should do the same thing. Plan lessons that really count, where they will matter, and that your children will remember it forever. That's what you can help these children do in order to achieve the goals. If you have an objective that you're trying to meet, make it matter along the way. Use your resources. Even if your school doesn't have a budget to purchase everything you need, there are things right in the building that can be helpful. We did a unit on recycling. We had random bins. So I got 3 bins and taped on the recycle symbols. And I had some trash, and I put the glass in that one, the paper in that one, and the aluminum in the other one. All I needed was 3 bins and trash. Like, you can use your resources. And if you have financial resources available, place the order. Ask, inquire. You'll be amazed at what's available to you as an educator for your kids and to improve your lessons and make them that much more effective. And last but not least, practicality and usefulness. Oftentimes, when we plan a lesson, we go through the motions. Or you're used to going through the motions for sake of just doing something. But think about how to make it matter, how to make it count. What's the school's mission? What are your goals for the year? Use that in the back of your mind to drive your lessons toward it. So you can take a lesson that you may not think is the most beneficial and turn it around to make it beneficial. Make it count so that children can remember and achieve their goals. If you take that into consideration when forming a lesson plan, it will make it so much easier because you know where you're going and where you want your students to go. And also, as you design that lesson plan, you'll find that even without it, because you've done so much planning, you are mentally prepared to translate all that you've given into that lesson to these young students, and they can do it. Have high standards. You should expect 100% to achieve every single time. That way, you can kind of work around any of the other things that may come in the way because you've already planned for them. So, this was the introduction to creating a lesson plan. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please let me know. Wait, don't talk. I have to turn it off.